What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of 10X Recruiting, brought to you by Metaview. Sile, did you lose your razor?
Just a new look I'm going for. Anyway, everyone prefers to listen to this and listen to the dulcet tone, so I think we're good. Don't worry.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, for those of you listening, Sile has...
Actually, I'm going to have to interrupt you there. You are talking about facial hair right now. look at that thing. Don't try and cover it up. Good.
Don't try and cover it up. Yeah. So I laughed so hard I covered my mouth. Sile's referring to my mustache. I'm referring to a beard that is probably more applicable for like a 15, 14-year-old boy. But, we're here.
I was getting told recently, by the way, that I look way younger than I am, which I'm now starting to take as a very big compliment.
I actually, it's a good look. All right. So transitioning. Today we talked to Fritz Singer, who's the VP of Talent at Personio. What were your takeaways from this episode?
Used to play soccer with Fritz. Good guy, good player as well.
Is that true?
Yeah.
No way.
We were both at Uber together, and there was like a cohort of folks who would go and play soccer, and he was one and I was one. I think I was better. So main takeaway was really just like it's a bit of a sort of a classic, but sort of always bears repeating, which is just the importance of doing the work to make sure there is a shared understanding of what good looks like. So I think we've already talked a bunch in various episodes about, I guess, recruiting less on feelings, which I think this is very connected to, right? If you can actually agree up front what good looks like and do the work to make sure there's a shared understanding there, it just makes your life so much easier in terms of not dealing with those thorny sort of super subjective conversations. So I thought, Fritz had a bunch of insight to share on that front.
Yeah, totally. Specifically on the Halo hires, which we talked about, and they had some great learnings at Personio. So I had two good ones. One's more actually like personal, and it's bet on scary moves. So, Fritz is an American. He's actually from Arizona, which is where I grew up. And not only do you seldom see like people like us like in tech, you seldom see people like us in Amsterdam, where he currently is. And the learning there for me, as I reflected back on my own life, is like career moves are really scary, right? Especially like when you're jumping into the unknown, you don't know what you're going to get yourself into, but like take the big swing, like make a big bet. And I think Fritz is a great example of this. We talk a lot about his story. The second one is context beats commands. So Fritz told this story about managing a multinational team for the first time in his career. And the way he repeated the story was like, hey, like I just told them I need this task done. And one of his direct reports like sat him down and was like, this is not going to work. I need to know like the full context here, like why like you want to do this. There's a couple lessons there. One is like managing folks that are not American. You have to be more thoughtful there. But in general, it was like, actually, no, you should always be giving context to people. You should always be helping them understand the why behind the thing, such that when they go off into the abyss and try and go solve the problem, they need to be way more prepared to be able to pick the route and pick the direction. And you can only do that if you can really understand what's going on there. So with that said, I love this episode. And without further ado, here's my conversation with Fritz. This is 10X Recruiting, a podcast from Metaview. Let's get after it.
It's fascinating when you talk to your parents or people talk to their parents and how you might have your mind made up on some of these career decisions or close to. And it's like maybe their opinion might even push you to validate your decision or push you in that direction. It's like that disconnect between what we know about tech and like the future growth that we can see or have seen versus what they're used to. It's like, our parents' generation, they're used to loyalty and like staying at a company for a longer period of time. And they almost question like, why would you take this risk? Why would you step into this unknown? And I love the unknown. I'm a risk taker. And so I really kind of have lived my career and try to embed that into my kids' values, even though they're very young. But yeah.
It's interesting too, because like most people from Arizona actually are not like big risk takers. Like if I'm just going to profile a large swath of people.
Yeah. Generalize the Arizonians. Yes, I would agree with that.
I mean, look, like half of the, like actually way more than half, 80% of the people who I went to high school with are in some sort of like inside sales or customer service job in Arizona. Like they didn't leave, right? And there's like, I think a lot about this. Bezos calls it the regret minimization framework. The framework is like you're 80 years old, you're on your deathbed, and you're looking back on your life. What regrets do you have? And so the whole idea there is like just try and like not have them at the end of the day and just like take the shots. And I've found that like that jump is scary. Like it's super scary. And then once you make the jump, the fall and that ride is so fucking fun. Like that for me is a blast.
Couldn't agree more. And I have my dad to thank in a lot of ways for this, because I was one of those Arizonians, whatever. I mean, that's not even a word, but we'll use it anyways, where all my friends were going to go to the University of Arizona, myself included. And for whatever reason, last minute, I decided to apply to University of Colorado because a friend was saying that he was going to apply as well. He never did. I did. Long story short, I got in. My parents were like, okay, you should go. Like, we're going to make this happen for you. And the rest is history. All my friends stayed in Arizona. And it is such a stark difference. Like the experience and the exposure I got, the international ecosystem that was there, and just, yeah, the rest, again, is history. And I thank my dad for really kind of pushing me there.
So you've been in Amsterdam for 9 years now.
Yeah.
You told me you don't speak Dutch. You manage multinational teams, which all speak like different languages. What's it like showing up in Europe as like Mr. America and then like running a talent team?
It was challenging at first because you don't know what you don't know, right? As an American, and so many people in the US think of Europe as just, one big continent, one big country, I should say, where it's like everything's the same, it's consistent, like culture and employment law or even communication stuff. And as we know in global environments, like that is not the case at all. But you don't really experience it. You don't know it until you're kind of on the ground, you experience it. And so I was new to management to begin with when I moved out here. And I quickly managed, I think, like 7 different nationalities in my time here. And I came in kind of guns blazing, thinking I knew everything, right? And it was very quick that I kind of got put in my place by even one of my direct reports. Like the way I communicated, the way I was trying to motivate and kind of get information for my team kind of fell flat pretty quickly. Like I'll always remember this one Dutch woman who reported to me. Like I asked something simple from her, right? Just via Slack, asked for just something by the end of the day, didn't provide the context to her, was just like, so kind of in go, execute mode. And she was like, I could tell, resistant to provide it, questioning a bit, to the point where I had to get on a Zoom call. I'm like, hey, what's going on? I need this. Like, can you just provide this information? Like, what's going on? Why is this an issue? And she was just like very direct, as the Dutch are. Like, you didn't provide me context. Like, it's not motivational. Like, I expect this in order for me to be like inspired and along for the journey. And I was just like, oh shit, okay. Like, this is it's going to be a little bit different because I need to tailor how I approach things to various teams, different cultures, different backgrounds, and so forth. And that was like an aha moment where I was like, I need to really engage and connect with my team and others, stakeholders, and so forth in a different way that I just wasn't exposed to in the US. And so now I think about my time here 9 years later, I've managed, dozen plus nationalities. And, at Uber, we were in over 30 countries, so had a lot of exposure to different regions and countries. And then since then led global teams. And it's very consistent how you just really need to take a step back, understand a bit of that background context, what motivates somebody, how they interact kind of culturally, and then what makes them tick. And just don't come in with any preconceived notions or assumptions, because it's going to get in your way and it can potentially be disruptive. So yeah, you see this consistently happen with Americans, especially that come over here. I think we are fortunate in Amsterdam because it's a multinational ecosystem. There's a lot of international companies here, but if you were to drop into France or Spain or Germany, it's exacerbated quite a bit.
What is it about Americans that rub people the wrong way?
A little cocky, a little showy, think we know everything.
I don't get it at all. That's weird.
Yeah, shocker, right? Never met those Americans. So yeah, that's it's just the stigma, rightfully or wrongfully, that we have. And
that definitely has a lot of truth to it. Okay, so Europe versus US. So you've been there 9 years now. Born an American. And so obviously the US market, you worked at Uber while you were here. And then you go there, you've been there 9 years. What are the differences between the European talent market and the US talent market?
Yeah. I mean, I think kind of what I alluded to earlier, in the sense that each country is different, right? They operate differently, different cultures, different things that make people tick there. But it's also different, just like talent density is different in each market. And so as I think about, I work for and lead recruiting at Personio, a German company. the talent density in Germany, especially for SaaS talent, is shallow compared to, say, like the UK or some other markets, right? Like established or proven scale-ups are not as prevalent there, especially compared to the US, right? There's, unlimited supply of talent in the US. Whereas each country, it's quite different in Europe, and there might be great talent there, but maybe they haven't led or been involved in multinational kind of work, or kind of seen the scale that we would hope for, especially at an established like unicorn like we are, where we have a certain bar and certain expectations in terms of that talent. So I think the talent density is not as consistent as you would see in the US. And when I have hiring leaders in the US that are trying to hire in Europe, I think that's a bit of a tough pill to swallow. And it takes them a long time to understand that. I think the other things are, employment law, employment labor, things like that around, notice periods. Like you can't move as fast if you have a 3-month notice period. Like by the time you open a role, you try to hire somebody, you get them on board, you hire them, and then 3, maybe more months notice period. Like you can't move as fast as in the US. And that is very tricky. And then I think the other thing is just like culturally, it is a little bit different depending on the market. So again, I'll use Germany as an example. Again, a generalization, but there are not as many. I think it's harder to find people that are willing to take the risk on these like startup or unproven companies. And so that is a bit of a hurdle at times in certain markets. Whereas in the US, tech is just so prevalent and everyone sees the success stories, and it's just part of the ecosystem that people want to jump in, and they're so driven towards equity and the growth story. That's just not always the case in Europe, where the stability is potentially more of a focus rather than the potential growth and the grind that comes with it.
I think about that a lot. I've had multiple friends tell me that. And like Personio is a good example of like, you guys are a legit unicorn, right? Like you're a legit company. You're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
But I can still imagine that people are viewing it as like this risk, right? This like unknown brand. Like, there's not as many, I think on X now, my entire feed is like venture capital.
Yeah.
And so I'm just swimming in it all day long, from work to like when I open my phone and scroll social media. Like I'm so in it now. Like I'm part of it. But then, you're hiring out of Europe, it's probably not the case. So what is your strategy then to like get these people interested, to get them to like, how do you de-risk? How do you get them to think about it?
It's interesting because there's I think we're less risky as a company at this point, right? So I think we are a brand that is established and more proven. So we're not necessarily facing the pushback of saying, is your company going to exist in a few years, right? As startups may have to fight that battle or kind of prove that point. But, we have more of a reputation of, okay, we're hard charging. We want to move fast. We have great ambitions. And with that comes certain demands and expectations. And that, I think that like different high octane energy and like expectations comes with a certain, I would say, just like expectation that not all Europeans are signing up for, right? In the US, it's just normal that people are working very hard, right? Working when they get home, kids are asleep, you're working all hours, okay, you get unlimited vacation, but do you take vacation? No, like, right? So like in Europe, okay, in August, like the whole, especially certain countries are like shut down because everyone takes their summer holidays, and, we get close to 30 days PTO. People are using that time. And so it's like that work-life balance is just embedded into who the Europeans are. And so I think for us, it's like, if we have a certain reputation of like, driving hard and like having this aggressive mentality and expectation, that is a harder one to potentially overcome. And so how do we try to do that? It's like, first of all, how do you get the right behavior, the personalities like opting in? And I think there are obviously those the certain percentage of people that are excited and have that high ambition, of course. But I think the other thing is like pushing and selling the impact that somebody can still have. So even though we're $8 billion valuation, there's still a ton of impact that we're able to showcase and that somebody can get out of their role. And so I think the right people join because of that impact and what the the brand and the experience can do for them in their career.
You guys are at that kind of like interesting phase of a startup's journey to where you have a big brand, you have a big valuation, you have a product that's working,
Yeah.
but you're not like mega tech company, like you're not like a Google or a Meta. How do you think about the right talent for your phase of company? And has that evolved as time has gone on?
I mean, it's definitely evolved for sure. So I've been here a little over 2 years, and I think I came towards the tail end of that, like, hockey stick growth where, nobody knew who we were. And then just like revenue just took off. And with that came, it's like the scrappy organic growth, like product market fit was perfect, right place at the right time. And with that came like a lot of growth, both in terms of employee count, revenue, and just like internal growth for the employees, right? And so at that stage, it's harder to probably get the type of talent, like the big tech talent or the experienced individuals that we can get now. And I think along that journey, we kind of came to a point where we were trying to, I would say, hire those established senior individuals that had been there, done that, because that, as most companies reach that inflection point where you're like, okay, we have these grand ambitions of being this multi-billion-dollar company, and we need senior leaders, we need senior ICs, SMEs that have been there, that have done that. Maybe we don't need them today, but like to get us to where we need to go to IPO and beyond, we want those proven leaders. And so that was very much part of what we did. We brought in leaders that also had that mentality, and a lot of them came from big tech, right? Big high profile individuals. And so then it was a trickle down effect where it's like they're talent magnets, right? They are like, you get people from the FANGs that are like C-level, and they are very well known in the industry. And so then it's like that expectation of, okay, we need to hire more from these companies because we know they've seen scale. We know they've seen complex problems, and we know, or we think that they can take us to that next level. And so I think that was a huge, immediate, kind of quick transition from this scrappy establishing startup to this, okay, now let's try to mirror this FANG talent strategy. And it's like that overnight creates a lot of challenges, right? In terms of cultural dynamics, and in terms of, reward philosophy, in terms of just like the general sentiment that the company is shifting towards. And there are great people, as we know, from every big tech company, from every FANG, but they're not always the right fit for a scaling organization or a startup that's kind of moving to that stage. And I think we, if I'm honest, like I think we probably overemphasized like the logo rather than the people. And so I think that we probably hired great people in terms of experience, the background, the companies, but probably weren't rigorous enough in terms of really assessing them for the behaviors, the aptitude principles, and just like scrappiness that we still needed and still do need at this time. Because, Personio, yeah, we're an $8 billion company, but it is still messy. And we need people that can figure out how to work through the messiness, the inefficiencies, and make things, that much more better. And I think a lot of the, again, generalizing here, I think a lot of people coming from these very big established 10, 20, 30,000 person companies, they expect certain resources, certain pay, certain things just to help them succeed. And we can't provide that, right? Like, nor should we, because we're just not at that stage. And so I think we're kind of in this interesting space where we're trying to almost like reset a bit to make sure that we're assessing people for the right behaviors and traits while bringing in obviously world-class talent, but focusing again more on now the personalities and behaviors versus just have you come from XYZ company.
Yeah, one of the things I've said about founders that I think is actually generally true for companies broadly is they're tactile learners, right? And so when you want to become like a mega tech company, the story you tell yourself is like, well, we need like the people who are at mega tech companies today. We need those employees. And what you tend to experience is like you get those people in the building, and some of them are awesome. Some of them have like the DNA and the start, like they were the ones that were like breaking shit, at Meta. But then others bring the playbook is the way I like to frame it. And that is such a fail state, but it takes a company like going through that cycle and experiencing it before they have to take a step back and realize like, holy shit, like what was working for us is actually the thing that is our magic sauce. And so I'm curious for you guys, like with your internal talent, how are you thinking about this? Like, when do we go hire somebody from the outside, and how, like, when do we continue to promote from within? Have you guys thought about that and had those conversations?
Well, it's funny because it's a very big topic right now, and one we are trying to drive more aggressively. And our CEO is a big proponent of this now, as we think about our future, because we have seen a lot of success with internal talent. But through this journey of going from this scrappy startup to let's go hire these big tech profiles, you kind of lose sight on internal talent. And I've experienced this for other companies as well. You're like, and I always, especially in a startup, I've worked for 4 pre-IPO unicorns. Like, I also push a hiring manager to think, how are we hiring for 12 months from now, 24 months from now, not just for today? And so I think you sometimes need somebody that can grow into that role, and they're more experienced maybe for the role, but that can be dangerous if the company doesn't catch up to that plan, right? And I think that's something we probably over-indexed on this time around, is let's go hire external talent in the last 12, 24 months, when in fact we maybe should have focused more internally. And so in this last year, we actually, funny enough, quite late to the party, but we had our first internal hiring policy program process that was in place. We were doing it in a quite a scrappy way up until about a year ago. And so this plan, this process, program, whatever you want to call it, is something that we've seen a lot of success with. So we went from 6% of internal hires, which again were quite reactive, organic last year, to about 20, just north of 20% actually this year. And so it's a huge shift and something we're seeing a lot of success from. And it is something we're just being a lot more intentional about, like making sure every single role we're looking internally at the same time. If it can hire them internally and prioritize that talent, let's do it. But my team, I have an executive recruiting team. Something in the last 6 months they've done is just around succession planning. So mainly at like the C-level -1, but really focused on how can we ensure that we are looking at internal bench strength, and that if somebody leaves, we know who internally we can tap into that role. And if not, how can we proactively get to the market, because we know there's a gap in our bench internally. So it is something we're just being a lot more intentional about.
Was that like a top-down CEO mandate sort of a thing, where it was like, hey, I want us to be focused on this, or did that come from somewhere else? Like, how did that program actually get solidified and then get the actual buy-in to get those results?
I mean, to be honest, it was something I was pushing for a while, but I think my CPO, my chief people officer, she has a very similar approach and mentality to me, just in terms of our talent strategy. And so we collectively were pushing it, and there was no pushback. It was just something where, pick your battle. Like, we had a lot of things to tackle, and so that was something that was on the slate that would just not get the attention. And finally, we're able to really kind of bring it to the forefront. And again, no pushback, and now the success is being proven, and so it's really being threaded through our performance process, through our manager enablement, and just being a lot more highlighted as a success within the people team.
I can imagine too that the data, like, what did you say, 6% in prior years of going to internal candidates. I can imagine showing up with that data and being like, this feels off.
Yeah, exactly.
What do we agree with this? Like, this doesn't seem right to me, that 94% of open roles are now going to external candidates. Like, is that the culture we want to build?
And it's fascinating because it was a topic that would come up in all teams. It was a topic that would come up in, manager forums. And it was something that was fairly well known within the business, that we were consistently hiring external talent without considering internal talent. It was absolutely accurate for the entire employee base to see it, recognize it, and kind of raise the alarm in some ways, because numbers don't lie, as you call it. And so it has been a big shift, and I think it's a very positive shift, but one that needed the attention.
So when you think about these internal employees that are getting now step up opportunities, I'm assuming now we're starting to assess more for potential, and we're starting to assess more for the behaviors that's required to be successful here as time goes on. How are you weaving that in as you guys assess talent, both internally and externally?
Yeah, you're absolutely right in the sense that it is giving people an opportunity to succeed, and kind of in these step up roles. And if I'm honest, some of it also is just driven by us being a probably leader in the SaaS market in Munich. So again, talent density is a little bit short in Munich. And so we have scoured the market in the last couple of years. And so part of it comes down to, are we able to get the right talent? Or should we invest and make sure that we just give people the opportunity internally? So I think those two things are very much a factor in this outcome. But I think when it comes to the assessment and how we think about it, so one of the steps that we have in our process is a bar raiser process. So ours, a lot of companies, Amazon, others, Uber, have it as a technical assessment. Ours is actually related to our Personio principles. So that is specifically around behaviors and do they have the right mindset to be a culture ad within the organization? And so we've iterated on that even this year and kind of revamped it a bit to make sure that we are getting the right people there, have the right mental agility and growth mindset. But then we are kind of going through some structured interviewing changes as we speak. And so making sure that the competencies per department really are critical for that organization. So like AI, everyone talks about AI, of course. But like, as we know, a lot of people don't have that proven experience. So as we just partner with Revenue and Success, or like our sales org, one of the competencies they're focused on is just like AI curiosity. And it's like, if they don't have the knowledge, okay, fine, let's not hold that against them. But how can we make sure that they are curious and or like actually proactive around this topic? And I think that is more about then the mental curiosity, the agility, and the behavioral aptitude that we want in the organization.
I like that framework of curiosity is like kind of being the thing, because what I'm experiencing now from what's driving me crazy is people who have the fixed mindset and who are just like, yeah, like I don't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
I don't think you can have that anymore in an organization.
Yeah.
Like I think it's absolute, in my opinion, cancer, because it spreads, right? And they get kind of sour on doing stuff that takes longer or that like isn't working right away or doesn't like provide the intended result. There's just so much leverage being had right now that like you have to toy around with things. Like you have to kind of tinker and toil in order to like get to this spot to where like maybe it provides something or maybe it doesn't, but we learned collectively.
Yeah. And I think to your point, if you're a leader, I think it's even a bigger cancer, as you call it, because if you're a leader in an organization, people are looking to you and emulating your how you operate and like your thinking in a lot of ways. And if you are rigid, if you're not willing to try and fail, then they're not going to either. And so I think it is so important as a leader to really show up in a way that you want your organization to show up.
Spend a minute talking about the bar raiser programs. So we rolled something out like this at DoorDash. Yeah. The funny part is I reported this guy named Andrew Monday, and the first big argument we had on this topic was the nomenclature. He wanted to call it Brita as like a filtering system, and I was like, dude, like that is so stupid. Like, and then we ended up on like Team Red, and there's like actually a lot of operational challenges with bar raiser. I think in theory it sounds awesome, and then you get into like operationalizing the thing. And all of a sudden, if you take 5% of the population and they have to be on every panel, now they're like interviewing more than anyone else.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to like catch up on their work.
Yeah.
And then typically the company doesn't reward them for it. And so they're like, why the fuck am I doing this? Like, this is like burning me out. And I get no extra points for doing it. And then you get this like, how do I become one thing? So like, well, they're special. I want to be special. I think I'm special. Why am I not? How are you guys solving those problems?
I'll let you know when we do, because everything you've just said is just like so true in bar raiser programs I've seen and like what we experience here. It's how do you make sure you have the right people, both in terms of their capabilities, but their willingness to do so. And it's normally the high performers that you want on other projects and you're giving stretch opportunities to anyways. And then you're asking them to do this as well, and they're not getting recognized, right? And so it is a challenge. And then you add on top of that, it's like you want them at a certain level, right? Because you don't want a junior person interviewing like a director. And so there's like then more expectation for senior leaders or senior ICs to be involved. So it is not a nut we have cracked by any means, but as we've aim to, and we've tried to reinvigorate it. A lot of it comes down to like the top down kind of expectations and like how our senior leaders think about it, because this is a program that is Hano, our CEO and our founders baby, right? It started as all the co-founders interviewing every single employee that joins the company, right? It's the tale as old as time, right? And then you scale, all of a sudden they can't do all the interviews. So what do they do in place? place of that, a bar raiser program, because they think that will work just like the founder interviews. And so it is something that he feels very strongly about. And so we try to just make sure that he is involved in kind of showcasing the importance of it, recognizing people. We're trying to just make it more prevalent in performance reviews so people know that that is additional time. Or making sure that we showcase the people that are very active, like in our all team. We try to do it every quarter. It's probably every 6 months. We recognize like the people that are interviewing the most. So we try to provide those shout outs, that recognition. It is also the executive team right now, at least it has been, is executive team will either nominate or validate the individuals. So they have a vested interest in those people that are involved. And so they recognize, they know who those people are. So it's just weaving them into like the recognition, performance in some ways, and in trying to get the TA team to sing their praises as much as possible.
Yeah, it's kind of, it's like the thing I love about your answer is the honesty of it, which I don't think any of these programs ever get to perfect.
No.
And I think there's like, I call them smart guy questions. So I just gave you like a bunch of smart guy questions. And the reason I know those questions is because I got them from like my team and all, like generally describing these people as detractors, right? When you're trying to do something different that is never going to be like fully baked.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I think your answer is exactly right, which is like, it's imperfect. It's probably always going to be imperfect, but it's coming from top down. And so we need to go figure out a way to make it work. And oh, by the way, I think it makes sense. Like it's just, you know, when the founders examples is a good one, because when the founders are interviewing everybody, it's not like they have all the time in the world either. And so we have to make sacrifices when we're building teams, especially if we want to keep the bar high. I'm curious for you is like, so with this, so you guys do the bar raiser stuff. Did the founders still look at things now? Do they still have like some sort of offer review?
Offer review only at like a director plus is what our CEO looks like, and he looks at, and he's involved in all interviews for director plus as well. So that's his interaction when it comes to interviewing. And he likes to remind me that he's happy to do more bar raiser interviews. He's like, if you need people, I'm happy to jump in. I'm like, thanks, but let's keep you out of it.
That is such a founder answer.
It's such a founder answer. He's like ready to roll his sleeves up and like dive back in. I'm like,
yeah,
all right.
You just got to be ready for that shit if you're in your job. Like that's part of the deal. Like, thank you.
A founder can show up at any time and want to get into the details of anything.
I literally had what? That's so funny you mentioned that. I had Henry, the CEO of Carta, one time. He was just kind of, what do they call it? Managing by floating. And he was just kind of like, we used to do that thing of just kind of like walking through the office. And then he saw me with running a team lead meeting. And he just opens the door and comes in and sits down. And I was like, what's up, Henry? He goes, keep going. Like, act like I'm not even here.
Like, great. Yeah. Easier said than done. No, I appreciate that. That's great.
There's something affable to that. And like, I think it's like a good way of understanding, instead of like, oh, they're like looking over my shoulder, which is the human instinct to feel it that way. It's more of like, they just give a shit and they care about the company, and managing by kind of floating around is actually a good way to do it.
And that's the thing about founders, right? They are more knowledgeable about every part of the business than anybody else in the company, right? And so if they are leaning into a problem, then it's in a lot of ways, use that to your advantage and see how you can actually hopefully benefit from that. I think like obviously they have experts around them for a reason. But I'll never forget like Travis Kalanick, the founder and CEO of Uber. I had a number of interactions in hiring for him, but somebody I remember coming out of a meeting on like tax was just like, couldn't believe how detailed Travis was able to get on a topic that like he should have no business really being able to go deep on. And I think that was just like something that everybody that interacted with Travis would say. It's like his ability to just go deep on anything. And so you had to be prepared for that. And it just made you that much better if you had any interactions. And I think that's the case with Guillaume, my last CEO, Checkout, with Hano. They are just able to go so deep. And I think that that is a testament kind of to the mentality and the type of person you need in the startup and the founder-led company, because you want people that can roll up their sleeves and are willing to do that. And I think in the Bar Raiser program, it's similar, right? You want people that care about the culture, care about the business, and want to invest that additional time that they might not have because they are culture carriers and they want to to lean in. And so I think those are the people we want to invest in and make sure continue to be champions of a program.
Yeah. And in fact, I think like if you're one of us, right, or a leader and you're like interviewing at a new company and you're meeting with the founder, you need to expect them and be looking for them to get to the lowest level of detail, because that is the common thread with all great founders. Is that, yes, they have a very wide aperture on shit that they understand, but then they also have the depth in that thing. And so you should be looking for it. Fritz, it's been awesome, man. Where can people find you?
Come to Amsterdam. In the absence of that, find me on LinkedIn. Yeah, reach out. Very quick to respond. LinkedIn's the easiest way.
Thanks for taking the time, bro.
Yeah, it was nice. Good to connect with any Arizonian, as I now call them.
I know. There's only two of us. Appreciate it, man.